boosting return on investment with augmented and virtual reality to try before you buy. I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Ori Inbar, partner and founder at Super Ventures. Welcome, Ori.
Hi.
What does Super Ventures do, and what motivated you to start the fund?
Super Ventures is one of the first, if not the first, VC fund focused on investing in early stage AR startups. We started it back in 2016 after many years helping build the ecosystem around AR as an entrepreneur and event organizer. And it felt like it's the right time to actually start making bets because the industry was starting to pick up. And I think today it's definitely looking like we're going to hit a huge stage growth. So it's definitely exciting to be investing in AR startups these days.
Well, that's exciting news. I want to talk more about that. But you mentioned the co-founder and executive producer of Augmented World Expo. Tell us about the event.
So I started the event 10 years ago in 2010, 2009 actually. I had a company in AR, and it felt very lonely at the time. So we felt like we need to join forces with other entrepreneurs in this space and just meet together to share thoughts and to try to advance this exciting domain. So that's how AWE came about. First year we had 300 people in a room, and nobody outside of this room had any idea what we were doing. But since then it grew to over 10,000 attendees across 3 continents. And it's really becoming the place where everyone in the industry goes to meet, to learn, to sell and partner with other people in the ecosystem. So we've been really proud of this event and how it helped drive a little bit the industry forward and help it get to where it is today.
10 years ago seems like a long time with a emerging technology that's really just more recently becoming more of a business conversation as well as fun, right? So what got you motivated? What made you decide that you wanted to be involved in the world of augmented reality, virtual reality, and those kinds of technologies?
So the initial epiphany happened when, after many years in startups and large corporations, I decided to leave and kind of go back to my roots in startups. And then I realized my kids are always in front of a screen, watching TV, playing video games, or on social media. And I felt like you can't really tell them not to do this, but how do we get them to interact a bit more with the real world? And that's when I discovered that, I wasn't the first to think about it. In fact, it's been around for, at that time, 40 years, but it was kind of lingering in labs. So never really made it to the mainstream. But then in 2008, all of a sudden, the iPhone came out, the Android came out, and all of a sudden we felt like there's the perfect device to deliver pretty good AR experiences, and it's already in our pockets. So that's when I started the company, and we thought that AR games will be the first to actually grab the attention of people. But of course, now 10 years later, it looks like it was a bit early.
You coined the term AR cloud. What is that, and what is Open AR Cloud?
So last year when the AR Kit by Apple was announced in September, and all of a sudden you had this really great tool to develop AR applications. It just worked, and it was on almost any phone out there. So everybody thought this will bring the AR to the mainstream, but in fact, it was a very lonely experience. It wasn't persistent. You couldn't really share it with other people. So that was a big stumbling block for driving the adoption of AR. So the AR cloud was a concept I coined back then as a way to describe the infrastructure that we need in order to make AR persistent and shareable across many users and many devices. And it's essentially a digital copy of the real world, sort of a 3D map that allows anyone to place content on the real world and then share it with many people that are, in different locations around the world. And since then, it caught fire in the AR industry. It turns out that many people were already working on this, And all of a sudden, we had a couple dozen startups demonstrating their capabilities towards the AR cloud. Also, Google, Apple, Facebook, and other large corporations realized that this is really the next step. And this year, we're starting to see them delivering kind of the first steps towards the ability to have a persistent and shareable AR experiences. So that's the AR cloud. Regarding the open AR cloud, everyone in the industry kind of realized this is really an important infrastructure, but if left to corporations to develop it and to kind of own it, many were afraid it will become fragmented and it will raise all sorts of privacy issues. So there was this need to create an open organization to help drive interoperability and openness, as well as privacy across the different AR cloud technologies. And that's how the open AR cloud came about.
You say there are some really big ROI numbers that are possible with XR, and I would agree with you. Explain where some of those opportunities are coming from right now.
So today we're seeing most of the ROI studies happening in the enterprise. Companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin and GE, which have been experimenting with AR for actually a couple of decades now, and are finally showing studies that are demonstrating significant savings in anything from manufacturing process, field service, to planning and simulation and so on, showing savings of 25 to 40% and even 99% in some cases. And it's proving to them that this is definitely a critical technology that they need to adopt. And they're now kind of going from initial pilots that were happening in the last couple of years to larger deployments in the hundreds and hopefully in the thousands in the coming years. And if you look, if you ask Fortune 1000 companies what they think about AR and VR technologies, according to recent studies, over 70% of them say that they either have already implemented it or are planning to implement it in the next couple of years. So it shows that the competitive situation here is really driving the adoption of AR and VR in the enterprise. But then also, if you look at on the consumer space, there's some initial hints of where this ROI could come from. And probably the two biggest ones are in the retail space or e-commerce, where companies like House, Walmart, IKEA, and other retailers are showing that the try before you buy capability of AR on any smartphone increases the conversion rate significantly from people just browsing the site to people actually pressing this button that says, visualize in my home or visualize on my face before I buy a product. And that is not only improving the user experience, but also improving the statistics on the retailer side, lower returns, a higher conversion rate, and so on. So these ROIs, I think, are convincing those retailers to jump into the space in a big way.
Tell us about your involvement in our lab NYC.
So just a couple weeks ago, this new Aeon VR Lab in New York City was announced. It's probably the first city-funded lab of this kind, and it's going to be running in the Brooklyn Navy Yard in a really beautiful building. NYU has joined forces with other universities in New York, as well as with Super Ventures, our fund, to run this lab. And our job is going to be to help support the startups that join the program with funding, as well as mentorships, and connecting them to the incredible network of companies and experts that we have built over the last decade.
Tell us, what advancements do you expect to see in 2019 from the XR technology space and maybe some use cases?
So I think 2018 was really a critical year in AR and VR, because if you look at all the main indicators, they're pointing to major growth about to happen. For example, in 2019, we will cross the 1 billion XR users, meaning there's an install base of 1 billion people that can actually experience AR and VR. And that is a huge install base to be working with. In addition, the tech giants that have jumped into the space last year, because they see significant growth opportunities beyond mobile in AR and VR, are now all have major products in the market and are building ecosystems around them. So we'll see more of that happen next year and more giants jumping in. And again, going back to the Fortune 1000 companies, they'll get to a point where a significant number of those are adopting AR and VR and are demonstrating significant ROI in those implementations. And then finally, investors. If you look at the amount of capital invested in AR and VR startups over the last 12 months, it's a record number. It's $7.2 billion. Now, they're shifting kind of their attention to different sectors within this whole space, but the numbers are growing and growing. And next year, we'll probably have another record number of investments, as well as many startups that are kind of crossing to a point where they're not just early stage, but are starting to show revenue and moving into Series A, Series B investments. So I think in that sense, it will definitely signal to other investors in the whole world that we're at a point where AR and VR cannot be ignored. It's a real thing and it's happening right now.
It certainly is. Ori Inbar, founder and partner of Super Ventures. If somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
The best way would be over VHS, the latest technology. Use email ori@superventures.com to contact me, and I'll be happy to talk to anybody about AR and VR. And if you want to apply for this new R Lab in New York City, just go to rlab.nyc and apply. We'll be happy to talk to you and consider you to join the program.
Very funny. VHS. Okay, Ari. I look forward to seeing you at Augmented World Expo in May. And if you guys want to find more of my interviews, you can do that right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or go to tonyahall.net. I've got links to all my social sites. Thanks for watching.